When Edward Mendoza, a 52-year-old billionaire, was dining at New York City's most exclusive restaurant, the last thing he expected was for a 23-year-old waitress to approach him and say, "Excuse me, sir, but my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Edward looked at his engagement ring, the one that had been in his family for generations, and felt the world stop. There were only 3 such rings in existence. He wore one. Another had vanished 25 years ago. And the third was supposed to be buried with the woman he had loved most and lost forever. New York City, November 2024. The restaurant Le Gastronomique in the upscale Upper East Side was where America's elite gathered. Edward Mendoza, 52, tycoon hotel magnate, owner of a luxury hotel chain valued at $500 million. He was dining alone at his usual table by the window. Edward looked like a successful yet tormented man. His graying hair was perfectly groomed. He wore a $3,000 Italian suit, and on his left hand gleamed a unique ring, a white gold signet with a blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It was a family heirloom over 200 years old. Dreamstime, dot come dreamstime, dot. Calm, he had come to the restaurant to quietly mark the anniversary of the company he had founded with his late wife, Carmen. But the celebration felt hollow without her. Carmen had died in a car accident 5 years earlier, taking all their dreams with her. "May I pour you more wine, Mr. Mendoza?" asked a soft voice. Edward looked up and saw a young waitress about 23 years old. She was brunette with expressive brown eyes and a shy smile. She wore the restaurant's impeccable uniform, white shirt and black vest. "Please." Edward glanced at her name tag. "It's Sophia." As Sophia poured the wine, Edward noticed she was staring at him strangely, as if something had unsettled her. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Sophia hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Excuse me, sir, but may I ask you something about your ring?" Edward looked at his left hand in surprise. "My ring?" "Yes," Sophia leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "It's just that my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Edward felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He froze, staring at the young woman in disbelief. "That's impossible," he murmured. "This ring is unique. It's been in my family for generations." "I know it sounds strange," Sophia said nervously, "but when I saw your ring, I almost dropped the tray. It's identical to the one my mother has worn for as long as I can remember." Edward's heart began to race. There were only 3 rings like this in the world. His great-grandfather had commissioned them in 1890 for his 3 children. He wore one, inherited from his father. The second had disappeared 25 years ago when his twin brother, Carlos, died in a mountaineering accident. And the third, "What's your mother's name?" Edward asked, his voice trembling. "A Carmen Ruiz," Sophia replied. "Do you know her?" Edward felt a world crumbling around him. "Tien." Carmen. His late wife had been named Carmen, though her surname was Mendoza, not Ruiz, and she had died 5 years ago. "How old is your mother?" Edward asked, struggling to keep his composure. "At 47, Sophia answered. "Mr. Mendoza, you've gone very pale." Edward tried to process the information. Carmen would have been exactly 47 if she were alive. But that was impossible. He had attended her funeral. He had seen her coffin. "Sophia," Edward said hoarsely, "I need you to do me a very important favor. Could you show me a photo of your mother?" Sophia looked confused, but pulled out her phone, scrolled through her gallery, and handed it to him. Edward stared at the screen, and time stopped completely. It was Carmen, his Carmen, alive. He clutched the phone with shaking hands, gazing at the photo as if it were a ghost. It was Carmen, unmistakably. Her hair was shorter, and she had aged a few years, but it was her. It was her. The same green eyes, the same smile, the same way she tilted her head. "Mr. Mendoza," Sophia watched him with concern. "Are you all right?" "This woman," Edward said, pointing at the photo. "Where does she live?" "On Albany, sir." "Wait, do you know her?" Edward stood abruptly, knocking over his wineglass. Other diners glanced over curiously. "Then why, Eater?" "Calm best fancy restaurants in Nick, according to Eater editors. Sophia, I need you to tell me everything about your mother. Everything. Sir, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" Edward sat back down, trying to calm himself. "I'm sorry. It's just your mother looks exactly like someone I knew long ago." "How well," Sophia said, still nervous. "Her name is Carmen Ruiz. She's lived in Albany for as long as I can remember." She worked as a secretary until she took early retirement 2 years ago. And your father? I don't have a father. Well, my mother says he died when I was a baby. A workplace accident? Edward felt chills run down his spine. A workplace accident. Yes, he was an architect. My mother says he died in a building collapse. Edward had been an architect before turning to hotels, and he remembered perfectly how he and Carmen had faked his death in a construction accident 25 years ago to escape danger. But the Carmen in the photo was his wife, the one who had supposedly died 5 years ago. Years ago. Is Sophia? Edward said gravely, when is your birthday? On March 15. Why all these questions? Edward did a quick calculation. If Sophia was 23, she had been born in March 2001, exactly 9 months after the last time he had seen his Carmen alive before her supposed car accident. My God, he whispered it. It can't be. What can't be? Edward looked at Sophia with new eyes. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see the resemblance. She had his nose, the shape of his eyebrows, his long, elegant hands. Sophia, Edward said, his voice breaking. Did your mother ever mention a man named Edward? The young woman frowned. No. Well, sometimes when she's had a little wine, she mentions an Edward and gets sad, but she never wants to talk about him. Edward felt tears welling up. Carmen was alive, and if his suspicions were correct, Sophia was his daughter. You need to see your mother, he said, standing again. Right now. But, sir, it's 10 p.m., and she's in Albany, 2 hours away. I don't care. Can you call her? Ask her to come? Sophia stepped back. Mr. Mendoza, you're really scaring me. What's happening? Edward realized he was acting like a madman. He took a deep breath and tried to steady himself. Sophia, what I'm about to say may sound unbelievable, but I think your mother is my wife. Your wife? But that's impossible. My mother isn't married. And my wife Carmen died in a car accident 5 years ago, or at least that's what I believed. Sophia looked at him as if he had lost his mind. Sir, my mother hasn't been in any accident. She's perfectly fine in Albany. Edward removed his ring and showed it to her. It's exactly like your mother's. Sophia examined it closely. It's identical. Even the inscription inside is the same eternal love. Edward felt a shiver. Only Carmen and he had known about that inscription. Sophia, Edward said with determination, I have to go to Albany tonight. Will you come with me? Will you come with me? But sir, they'll pay you $1,000 to come with me. I just need you to take me to your mother. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. But if it turns out you're crazy, I'm calling the police. Edward smiled for the first time in years. If I'm crazy, you can call whoever you want. Edward's Audi sped along the highway toward Albany at 11 p.m. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, still nervous but intrigued. Can you explain what's really going on? She asked. Edward kept his eyes on the road. 5 years ago, my wife Carmen died in a car accident, or at least, that's what I was told. The rings, the name, her age, your birthday. Everything matches. They arrived in Albany at 1 a.m. Sophia directed him to a small apartment in an older neighborhood. They climbed the stairs in silence. Sophia knocked softly. Mom, it's me, Sophia. The door opened, and a woman appeared in a robe, her hair tousled from sleep. Edward felt his heart stop. It was Carmen, his Carmen, alive and real, standing before him after 5 years of believing her dead. Carmen looked at Edward, and all color drained from her face. Edward, he whispered, voice trembling. Hello, Carmen. We have a lot to talk about. Carmen looked at Sophia with panic in her eyes. What have you done? Mom? Is it true? Is he my father? Carmen covered her face with her hands and began to cry. Come in, she murmured at last. I knew this day would come. UNICEF.org, .go.obenus, Ball living room was silent. Carmen had put on a jacket over her robe and was looking at Edward with red-rimmed eyes. How long have you known I was alive? Edward asked. Always. I never believed you died in that construction accident. Then why did you fake your death? Carmen took a deep breath. Because I discovered what you were really doing. The deals with Raul Vasquez, money laundering, the threats. Edward tensed. How did you find out about Raul? He followed me one day. He told me that if I didn't cooperate, both you and I would end up dead. Sophia looked at them, confused. Who is Raul Vasquez, ye criminal? Edward said bitterly. Someone I never should have done business with. Carmen continued. Raul offered me a deal. If I faked my death and disappeared, he would leave you alone. But if I stayed, he would kill us both. And you agreed I was pregnant, Edward. 2 months pregnant. I couldn't risk our baby's life. Edward looked at Sophia with fresh wonder. Oh, why didn't you tell me? But because you would have tried to stop me, and we both would have ended up dead. Sophia stood abruptly. You're saying I've lived a lie for 23 years. Sass. I did it to protect you, Carmen said. You told me my father was dead. I grew up thinking I was an orphan. Edward stepped toward Sophia. I'm sorry. If I had known you existed, after I faked my death, Rawl left you alone, Carmen went on. Carmen went on. But he threatened to kill us if I ever tried to contact you. For all these years, I lived in fear. Then, 5 years ago, Rawl died in a gang war. I saw it in the newspaper. We were finally free. Then why didn't you come back to me? Because too much time had passed, and I was no longer the same woman. Sophia headed for the door. I need some air. I need to think. She left the apartment, leaving Edward and Carmen alone for the first time in over 20 years. Carmen and Edward sat in silence after Sophia left. The weight of more than 2 decades of separation hung between them. She looks like you, Carmen said at last. She has your temperament, Edward replied with a sad smile. Carmen removed her ring and held it out to him. I suppose I should give this back. Edward shook his head. That ring belongs to you. It always has. Edward, after your death, I left all the dirty business behind. I sold everything. I walked away from that life. Did you? For real? Aral got what he wanted. He took the only thing that truly mattered to me. Carmen looked at him with new eyes. That makes me glad. Carmen, I know many years have passed, but do you think we could try to get to know each other again? Carmen hesitated. Edward, we're not the same people we were 25 years ago, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe now we can build something better. At that moment, the door opened and Sophia came back in. She had been crying, but she had calmed down. I've been thinking, Sophia said, and I've decided I want to get to know my father, but on my terms. Edward nodded. Whatever you want. First, no more lies. Ever? Accepted? Edward said. Second, I want to learn about your life little by little. Of course, Carmen said. And third, I want you to promise you'll never put business above family again. Edward stepped closer to Sophia. I promise. In these past 5 years, I learned that all the money in the world means nothing without family. Carmen came over and hugged them both. Maybe it's not too late to be a family. Edward felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 6 months later, the terrace of Edward's most luxurious hotel in Miami was decorated for a special celebration. It was Sophia's 24th birthday, and for the first time in her life, she was celebrating it with both parents. The months had been a slow but beautiful process of getting to know one another. Sophia had quit her waitress job to study hotel management, with Edward paying for her tuition. Carmen had moved to New York City to an apartment near Edward's, and they were slowly rebuilding their relationship. How do I look? Sophia asked, twirling in the blue dress Carmen had given her. You look beautiful, Carmen said, adjusting her necklace. Edward approached with a small box in his hands. Sophia, there's something I want to give you. Sophia opened the box. Inside was a ring, not identical to Edward's and Carmen's, but with the same design, crafted in rose gold. I had this ring made especially for you. It's part of the family tradition, but it's uniquely yours. Sophia slipped it on and began to cry. Dad. It was the first time she had called him that. Edward's eyes filled with tears. I love you, my daughter. Carmen came over and hugged them both. I never thought this day would come. During dinner, Sophia stood to make a toast. 6 months ago, I thought I was fatherless. Today, I have a complete family. It hasn't been easy, and we're still learning how to be parents and daughter after so many lost years. But I believe the best families aren't the ones born perfect. They're the ones that choose to work at it. Edward raised his glass. To second chances. Carmen raised hers. To love that survives time, Sophia smiled. And to families that find each other when they least expect it. 3 years later, Edward and Carmen renewed their vows in a small but emotional ceremony. Sophia was the maid of honor and walked her mother down the aisle. Edward had transferred most of his hotels to a charitable foundation, keeping only 2 for a comfortable life. Carmen now ran the foundation, which helped separated families, turning her pain into purpose. Sophia had graduated with honors and was now managing one of the family hotels, proving she had inherited her father's business talent. and her mother's compassion. Hence, one evening, as they dined on the terrace of their home outside New York City, Sophia raised her wine glass. You know what's the strangest thing about all this? A what? Edward and Carmen asked in unison. That it all started because I recognized a ring. If I hadn't been working at that restaurant that day, if I hadn't seen Dad's ring, we might never have found each other. Edward took Carmen's and Sophia's hands. A fate has mysterious ways of bringing families together. Carmen smiled. Sometimes the most precious things are found when you stop looking. And sometimes, Sophia added, happy endings come when you least expect them after years of waiting. Edward looked at the ring on his hand, then at the rings on Carmen's and Sophia's. 3 rings. 3 lives that had been separated and reunited. Their story proved that true love can survive decades of separation, that families can be rebuilt even after years of necessary lies, and that sometimes miracles arrive disguised as coincidences in elegant restaurants.